All right, y'all, we got some Kenergy going on over here. Just got back from seeing the Barbie film. And you know what? Before I give my thoughts on the movie, just in case you haven't heard this today, and I'm talking to you, yeah, you right there. You're great. You're awesome. Remember that. With that being said, let's talk about Barbie. What is going on to all my movie lovers out there, and welcome back to my channel. Elliot here with a brand new review, and today we're discussing the new Greta Gerwig live action comedy fantasy, The Barbie Movie, a film I was looking forward to seeing. I've heard great things about it, got a chance to see it in theaters, and here we are talking about it in today's spoiler-free review. But first, I want to talk to my movie fans in the comments. Let me know if you were looking forward to seeing this film, and once you've brought your Kenergy, your Barbie energy, you had your swagger ready to go see this movie, what did you think after walking out? I'm talking pros and cons from the direction, the story, the performances. Did you have a good laugh? Did you have a good cry? Were you disappointed by the film? Let's talk about all that in the comments below. So I'm going to be honest with you all, as I am with all my reviews, but the first 15, 20 minutes or so, I wasn't enjoying myself. The jokes weren't joking. The story wasn't telling. The vibes weren't vibing. I just found it to be super campy, over the top, super meta, which I expected, but it was just too on the nose at points, especially when we're in the Barbie world. And by the way, set design, incredible. We'll talk about that here in a second, but it just wasn't clicking for me. But once this story found its rhythm and found its footing, this wacky, cheesy, corny, weird movie eventually grew on me. And that is all due in part to Greta Gerwig, who I consider to be a generational talent. Her brilliance is on full display in this film. I'm still in awe by what she was able to accomplish while directing this movie, mixing in all the varieties of styles and techniques and the tone she's dealing with. Like, she is dealing with campiness, cheesiness, heartfelt moments. There's a lot of stuff going on in this film from a tonal standpoint, and once again, Greta Gerwig is just amazing. I'm a fan of Lady Bird, the coming of age, great coming of age story. Little Women, a great retelling of that story. And this is an IP that we all know. Even if you've never played with Barbie or Ken, which I've never played with them, I've seen them in stores, I've had friends that have had them. This is a big IP, and she puts her own visionary style on this film. And we'll talk about her writing a little bit later, but the direction was just incredible in my opinion. But also, speaking of incredible, we gotta talk about what I consider to be one of the greatest set designs I've ever seen. The Barbie world is like an identical replica of the toys. Like, there's a great mixture of like practical sets with a little bit of CGI when needed. It is just a beautifully put together movie. And when that time of the year comes around, when they're handing out awards, hair and makeup, set design, production of this film, it is spectacular to look at. Now, switching gears and talking about the performances, who I thought across the board from our supporting cast was fantastic. Standouts for me being Issa Rae. I've been a big fan of hers for a while. She plays the President Barbie. She's a great character. She has some good laughs to be had in this film. But also, speaking of laughs, my favorite comedy of all time is Superbad. And Michael Cera's been in and out of Hollywood the last decade or so, but he's in this film. He plays a character by the name of Alan, and he's a character that I had a fun time with. He's kind of the oddball out, and he has some really good one-liners in this film. So supporting cast is fantastic, and if you are a fan of Netflix's Sex Education, there's a little trio of characters that put a big smile on my face, as well as just some other great cameos that I really enjoyed. So collectively, the supporting cast was given their all and given some fun performances. But man, we got to talk about the perfect casting of Barbie and Ken, played by Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling. Focusing on Margot Robbie and her range, she is doing so many great things in this role, bringing Barbie to life and managing to provide such an in-depth look of this character, and brings out so many different things she's tackling with the meaning of life, the purpose of what she does and where she fits in. She's having this existential journey that she's put on, and it is one that is not only heartwarming, but also profound. Like, we all know Margot Robbie is an Academy Award-winning actress, rightfully so. She is great in this movie. Like, she's doing comedy, she's hamming it up, she's having a good time. She is the perfect version of Barbie, but then when it gets to those more vulnerable, emotional levels, home run of a performance. But I'm gonna be honest with you all, man. The synergy, the Kenergy was there for my man. I mean, there were points when Ryan Gosling just steals the movie for me. Like, he is the perfect Ken. And the thing I love about Ryan Gosling's performance is he's not playing Ken as like a joke or an impersonation of a live action version of Ken, but instead he brings all the Kenergy to this role, and he's in this particular situation where he's playing with the patriarchy and bringing that to the world that they live in, which has some interesting stuff that's going on. But then he has this moment of self-reflection that feels very earned and profound as well. And word on the street is we might get a Ken spinoff movie, which there is like a line of that in this movie. Again, there's a lot of meta jokes and meta commentary in this film, but Ryan Gosling is fantastic in this movie. Another thing that comes to mind is I really enjoyed this kind of Matrix type of explanation of how the Barbie world and the real world are coming to each other and crossing paths. Like, it's a really interesting way that they combine those worlds, as well as how they play the Mattel of it all really fits into the story well. And lastly, I knew that this film, directed by Greta Gerwig, also co-wrote by her and her husband Noah Baumbach, this wasn't going to just be your stereotypical surface level summer film, but instead it's a very deep, thought-provoking story that handles subject matters such as self-discovery, loving the things that make you who you are, being the perfect idea of what a Barbie is something you shouldn't strive for. Perfection is just that of the same idea of this fantasy Barbie world. You can't get perfection, but instead embrace who you are, embrace your flaws, because that's who you are. I love that message that the film has to offer. And also, just from like a male perspective, again, we have Ken, we have male characters in this movie, and I had fun with all that stuff and, you know, relatable topics to be had. But as far as like the target audience this is going for, from the female audience side of it, it's a beautiful story involving womanhood, man. And there's a portion of this film that it was like very emotional, just kind of seeing these characters, these women, and what they were going through. And again, I'm clearly not a woman, but I just appreciated that element and that story that was just so well done in this film. So there's a lot to be said about this in a positive light. But just as this film presents, nothing's perfect. So let's talk about some of my criticisms that I have for this film. One being, as I mentioned, the first 20 minutes or so didn't really work for me, but I did feel like the film did suffer from some pacing issues, especially when we would cut between the fantasy Barbie world and the real world. Some of that pacing had a little bit of issue, but also shine a light on the story elements, which sometimes felt a bit messy, a little bit underdeveloped, as well as there were some characters who in my eyes were kind of set up to be very important to the narrative, and they had their moments, but they sometimes felt like they were forgotten about. For example, we have the human characters like America Ferrera's character and her daughter. She has a very pivotal role in this film at points. Like, she has this monologue, which I thought was great, and it's like a big impactful moment in the film, but then after that, she's just kind of there and just kind of forgotten about. And there's other characters in this film that were like, oh, Helen, the president, and other variety of characters. Will Ferrell's characters, like, oh, but then they just kind of are forgotten about. But going back to the mother and daughter story, I thought that plot in particularly reminded me very much of like Toy Story 3 meets Inside Out, but like a live action version of that. It didn't have a payoff for me. Like, I really wanted that mother and daughter relationship to have a more impactful payoff for my taste. But also some other things that come to mind. Of course, comedy is very subjective, and I had some funny laughs or some social commentary with like pop culture zeitgeist stuff that I found to be, you know, funny, but I didn't find all the jokes to land. But again, that's very subjective. Last point I want to make here is I appreciate the message behind this film and the commentary that it had, but I'll be honest with you all, sometimes it was a little bit too on the nose, and it was very kind of stereotypical in how they would present certain things and certain ways that they would tell the story while touching on the social commentary that it had to add. So those are my main pros. Those are my main cons. Before I give you all my overall score, if you stuck around to this point in the review, I really appreciate you all. If you could, hit the thumbs up, consider sharing, consider leaving some thoughts in the comments as well, and also subscribe to the channel. Overall, while at times it was a bit too campy and wacky and weird at points, there's no denying this final product. The artisanship was spectacular. Every costume, hair and makeup, the production design for the Barbie world was beyond my imagination. The brilliance of Greta Gerwig is just so amazing to see, and how she was able to do so much with the story and play with these variety of different tones. Margot Robbie, Ryan Gosling were born to play Ken and Barbie. Barbie has its flaws, but given all the topics and themes is handling, it's a well-made movie. I can't believe this Barbie movie actually exists, but I'm glad it does. I'm going to give the Barbie movie a solid 3.8 out of 5. Now, there's a little caveat, a little asterisk there. on a rewatch, because I do plan on rewatching this film because I did have a good time with it. But now kind of knowing the tone, the campiness, the wacky and weirdness, I can probably take in more of the film on a rewatch. So right now it's at a 3.5, but I can see that going up, like I said, when I revisit this film. But hey, that's my thoughts on the Barbie film. I want to know yours in the comments. Let me know your pros, your cons. What did you enjoy? What didn't you enjoy? Let's talk about that in the comments section. Just a friendly reminder before we wrap this thing up. Again, you are awesome. Hope you're staying safe. Hope you had a good time. Before we wrap it up, consider liking, sharing, leaving your thoughts in the comments section. Consider subscribing to the channel and hitting that notification bell, as you can see on the screen now. Consider checking out my other videos I've done recently. Check out my most recent review, and we'll catch you all on the next video. Yeah.